love of poetry, and her ability to help us not only know about birds and these incredible women, but just about ourselves, dropping deeper into our own understanding. She has numerous accolades that you can look on her website for, but the one that just stands out the most is that she has this thing she's coined as slow birding, and the ability to help others really know that they've always been a birder.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Bridget, I really am so grateful that you agreed to come and share with us. And I know that all these people are either followers of you already, or they're going to be after this. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. It's really good to get to meet you after hearing that you've been on some of the First Fridays guided slow birding sessions that I've been offering for free each month. Yay, thanks. That's probably the best introduction I've ever gotten. Super. So hi, everybody. I do see some familiar names here. Welcome back into the flock. And for those of you who are flocking up with me for the first time, I hope you'll come back again in one way or another. So tonight, I'm going to share with you a little bit about slow birding and some of the things that I've discovered in working with teachers. And also, I've got 3 kids of my own. They're 9, 10, and 11. And so I've tried a lot of this stuff out on them as well. And I think they have taught me just as much as I probably have taught them. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to invite you at any point in time to drop questions in the chat, and we'll either, pause to answer some of those questions, or we'll hold them right till the end. And so what I'd like to do is just give you an overview of slow birding, what it is, and how you can incorporate some of these things into your work or into your own personal birding practice. So for me, slow birding really came out of my career has been as a naturalist. I've worked all across New England for different Audubon centers and conservation organizations. And so I'm very grounded in the scientific world. And what started to happen for me was that things started to shift, especially after I had kids and I couldn't bird in the same traditional birding way that I had always birded. And I thought I was going to I had FOMO, I had that fear of missing out. And what I discovered was this whole other way of connecting with birds and connecting with myself. And it's become this way to have a foot in another world, in a world of deep nature connection, a spiritual connection, and a wellness connection also. So what is slow birding? I've kind of come up with these little pieces that help me define what it is. It's really less about listing and chasing and all of those things that many people don't find appealing to them. There's so many folks that I've talked to who have said, well, I like birds, but I'm not a birder. Many of you, maybe some of you have said that before. And so I wanted to really figure out why that was. And for some of us, it's that we don't like the competitive aspects of birding. We're not interested in listing or chasing or kind of one-upping the next person. And so when I stripped all that back, these are the things that came out for me. It was really about kind of being present with whoever was present whenever they were present, and really taking advantage of getting to know birds right where I was. And I call those birds that are like the birds that I get to encounter every day, my usual suspects. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. It really led me to spend more time with individual birds, no matter who they were. So instead of trying to find the rare and the unique, I was trying to find the rare and the unique within every bird. So whether it was a house sparrow or a pigeon or a European starling, what more can I learn from that bird by just slowing down and kind of spending a little bit more time with that bird? By doing this, my naturalist skills deepened. And I started looking at birds and listening to them in very different ways. And I also started to realize how traditional birding wasn't preparing people, kids, anyone really well for how to look at a bird and how to listen. It was really focused on identification. And so there was so much more there that we were missing, including this last piece, which has got to be my favorite, which is noticing behaviors. So much of traditional birding focus is using behaviors to identify a bird, and the focus tends to stop after you identify a bird. You just kind of move on. That I really wanted to kind of deepen my relationship, and part of doing that was noticing and interpreting behaviors. So we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Stacy mentioned a talk that I did on the history of birding and the women of ornithology. And when I started to try to figure out why I was birding differently and what I really valued about birding, I was wondering why there weren't a lot of women leaders within the birding field. And we hear about Audubon and we hear about Roger Torrey Peterson, and where there had to be women there. And I knew about this first woman, Florence Merriam Bailey. She's actually the person who wrote the first field guide to birds in North America. And when I discovered Florence, I discovered Olive Thorne Miller and Mabel Osgood Wright. The thing that all three of these women had in common is that they birded in place. And in a way, that was because of the era that they came out of, the Victorian era, where the woman's place was in the home. But they were making some very deep observations around bird behavior and the everyday life of birds that the male ornithologists of the time were not making. In fact, they diminished many of these women's work, and it really wasn't highlighted. And so as I dug into their work, I was like, they're slow birding just like me. I found my people. I was so excited. And there are numerous books that these women have written that are a joy to read right now as well. And so I encourage you to take a look at their work. You just do a quick Google search online. Some of their books are still in print. And if I haven't gotten to an original copy first of their books, maybe you can, and have some fun kind of digging into some of these historical pieces that these three women have written. Great reasons why to bird this way. These are the four things that have come up for me, and I mentioned them a little bit. One is building a deeper skill set, slowing down and birding in place using the sit spot method, which I'll talk about in just a minute, really helped me kind of focus my attention and my intention on what I wanted to be doing and how I wanted to be connecting with birds. Oh my gosh, it slowed me down and calmed me down. I'll tell you, going through the pandemic, this practice really saved me at times from bouts of anxiety and loneliness, and really kind of helped me balance things out. The birds were there for me. No matter what day it was, I could step outside and the birds would call me into awareness. It deepened my connection with place. And so when you go somewhere and you sit in that same spot over and over again, you can't help but to get to know the land as well as the birds that are there. And the birds kind of lead you to that because they have preferences about where they are on the land from day to day. And the last piece is that tool for good health. It really, and there's tons of scientific research out there right now. We're really coming into a better understanding of how when we detach ourselves from nature, we're detaching ourselves from something that's very core to our very existence. After all, we're animals too, and we really are a part and one with nature. And when we separate ourselves from that, kind of affects our whole body and our mind and our spirit as well. So let's talk a little bit about birding where you're at. I'm going to show you a picture of my backyard. It's from ages ago, because if you look really carefully, you can see my kids in this picture. Yep, all three of them are there. And they're all very tiny. They're much bigger now. But this is my backyard. I live in downtown St. Albans, Fortunately, we're right on the edge of the city. And so there is a little bit of woodland in the back of our house, maybe an acre or two. There's a brook that runs along the edge of the house, but I am surrounded by other houses and neighbors. And city noises, Route 89, which runs, north to south through Vermont, is literally 2 blocks away. St. Albans is also the rail city, so we get lots of train sounds as well. So it's like not the perfect like nature oasis, right? This isn't about escaping to someplace unique and special to get a dose of nature. It's about really finding it right outside your door and celebrating it and connecting with it. So birding where you're at, these are some of the things that I really love about it, is really getting to know those usual suspects, those birds that are your neighbors. You can observe seasonal changes because you can watch how things shift and change and who arrives and who leaves. Like, oh man, over the past couple of weeks, we've had evening grosbeaks in this neighborhood, which is unheard of. It's a big year for finches this year. And so the evening grosbeaks arrived and ate up all the seeds on the alder trees. And I think they've moved on now. So they're elsewhere. And I can't wait to see who else shows up. My sit spot is literally right outside my back door. Oh, I thought I would have an arrow here. But if you see the 2 kiddos here and the one in the yellow vehicle and the one in the yellow t-shirt, there's a little set of steps there. That's where my sit spot is. I sit there. I try to go 20 minutes every day. I bring a cup of tea or coffee. Maybe it's the end of the day. I got a glass of wine or a beer. I bring my journal. I might bring a blanket to stay cozy, right? So, and I go and I sit with whoever is there and whoever comes in. We do have bird feeders as well during the time of year when there aren't bears around. So we hang out in that spot. The kids have their own little sit spots in the backyard too that they spread out to when we're doing sit spots together. And we may map our yard. We may take notes. I have a nice field journal that I use. And I try to just capture my observations. Maybe I'm just drawing on days where there aren't a lot of birds and just really trying to connect with that place. These are all things that I've experimented with and brought to school groups that I've worked with over the years. And I'm going to show you a couple things. I think I've got at least 1 or 2 slides coming. Yeah, this one. And then we'll do a little activity together in the chat. So this is one of the mapping activities that I did with a group of, I think they were 3rd and 4th graders. And we mapped the school out together. I drew on a big piece of butcher black paper, the school, the playground. You can see the parking lot in there. There's a hillside that's out behind the back of the school, and then Route 100B there. And the kids and I walked the property to get to know what it might be like to be a bird around the school. And we brought egg cartons, and what I asked them to do is, if you were a bird, what's here for you to eat? What kind of resources are available to you? So they collected the food, and then we taped it to the different spots on the map where we found them. And then the kids also added other information about where would there be good places to shelter, where was there water, all of that. And it was just a really fun way to kind of capture what was available on the school ground so they could get in their heads where they might be finding birds, where they could notice birds based on what the birds' needs were around the school. So speaking of birds that you might find around your school or your neighborhood, this is where you guys get to participate. So find the chat box. And this is my question for you. If you take a moment and you can jot it down on the paper in front of you and then maybe share a couple of the birds in your in the chat box, ask yourself, who do I see or hear every day? And maybe you don't know the name of the bird. Maybe you just make up the bird. It's the one that goes pew, pew, pew. There's the pew, pew, pew bird. Some of you might have a pew, pew, pew bird. They're very popular out east. And a lot of the folks that come from the West really want to see the pew, pew, pew bird, which is Well, I won't tell you because it's on the next slide. So that's just an example of how you can name a bird without knowing the common name. So see if you can think of 3 to 5 birds. That's kind of the group I like to work with when I think of folks trying to get to know their usual suspects. And those usual suspects could change depending on the time of year. So who's around your neighborhood or your schoolyard right now? There we go. All right. Ooh, and what's fun is as they come in, you can see some overlap, right? So here, it's really not about getting to know all the birds or a ton of birds. That's not the outcome we're looking for. We're looking for deep relationships with birds that we can see or hear every day. Awesome. So we've got, like, I'm seeing downy woodpecker pop up a lot, chickadees, right? And we've got multiple species of chickadees all over the United States. So you may have Boreal chickadee, you may have Carolina chickadee. Oh my gosh, so many kinds of chickadees. Nice. Juncos right now. I like that how Molly put that in there right now. That might mean that they're not there earlier in the year and all of a sudden they've come by. Awesome. Seagulls, Canada geese, sparrows, chickadees, crows, so good. I love how everybody's having fun with juncos right now. It's so good, right? And noticing that they've come in, purple finch. We got a lot of owls on here. I'm a little jealous. Owls right in your neighborhood. Good, good, good. Cardinal. Super. Okay, so these are what you can build on. This is your foundation, right? And if kids just learn 5 birds, great. I think that's awesome. And they learn them really, really well. You're going to get to know them really well. So these are 4 birds. I'm having trouble with math tonight. These are 4 birds that are really common in my yard during the spring, summer. So song sparrow is up in the corner. I always like to try to find a sparrow, and juncos fall into that family. So sparrows are the little birds on the ground. Who are the birds on the ground? And with really little ones like preschoolers, these are the birds that are on their level, right? They're the ones that are right down there that they will notice first, oftentimes because we're up here looking up above and in the trees, and the sparrows are the ones that are down low. Cardinal, there's the male northern cardinal. That's the pew, pew, pew bird. And so that bird is a year-round resident, whereas song sparrow has left, and we have other sparrows that have come in right now where I live in Vermont. American robin is holding court right there with the biggest picture because that's a big bird. It's one that's on the ground. It can be in the trees. And it's one that we grow up with as kids. You guys have some work to dispel some myths around robins, so you got to help me with that. They don't just eat worms, and I'm sure with your little ones, they will observe what else they're eating other than just worms, especially this time of year. What else are they going after? And then chickadee, black-capped chickadee. Maybe you have Carolina chickadee, there's Boreal chickadee, there's mountain chickadee. There's all kinds of chickadees all across the United States. That's another really great bird to get to know. And once you know one chickadee, the next time you see one in a different part of the country, you're like, ooh, I recognize that bird. All right, so those are my usual suspects right now. I would say I have junco, goldfinch, chickadee, and nuthatches are probably my 4 in my yard right now. Really super common. One of the ways that you can keep track of birds, this is a list that I call the Backyard Big Year list. We've been keeping this list in our house for about, I think we're like 8 years now. I think we're on our 8th year for this. This is a list from 2018. And basically what we do is we start it on January 1st. We put one of those giant Post-it notes up on the wall in our sunroom. And then we write down the birds that we see each day, new ones, as they come into our awareness. So we're not repeating birds, we're writing them as they arrive. So you can see at the top there, January 1st is all in blue, and we had 4 species that day. And then the second, we probably had those first 4 species, but then we added some other ones. And so it's this way to kind of tap into phenology, that change in seasons, and paying attention to who's showing up. Now, this was before my kids were old enough to really start writing and contributing. And what I love now is they notice birds and they write them up on our list. And I think we're at 63 species so far this year. So we got a little bit of noticing to do before the end of the year. And there's still some other birds possible. So my little tiny postage stamp backyard, we average 61 species a year over those 8 years. 73 is the highest number that we've ever had of different kinds of birds. And that was during the pandemic when we were all home. And then we have a total of about 93 species seen for our yard. Now, I didn't do this before I started slow birding. And what it showed me was that I had no idea what was possible. I really didn't. And I was running around trying to pick up cool warblers and all these different unique birds in different places. And really, I just needed to hunker down and pay a little bit more attention to what was going on in my own neighborhood. Merlin is on there, number 23, and the Merlin is the badass in our neighborhood. And when it shows up in the spring, it is an exciting moment because they are setting up territories, they're taking out other birds, they're like fighting with the crows. So there's all these things that you start to notice when you start to pay attention in this way. Backyard Big Year list. I've got updates of this on my Instagram feed if you want to know what the list looks like this year. So before I mentioned about looking and not really seeing things, and so someone said, does the Merlin stay or just come and go? The Merlin lives 2 blocks away. They nest in a set of pines 2 blocks away every year. There's a spot for them, and they're here in the spring. They stay until about end of September, October, and then they're gone. So it's really exciting when they show back up again. One of the things that we're not great at is really helping both adults and kids learn how to look. We get so focused on plumage that we forget to kind of really break it down into size, shape, and structure. And one of the ways we can help kids describe what they're seeing is to get to know a set of 3 birds and then make comparisons, right? So here we have sparrow, American robin, and crow. And so we can say, I saw a bird, it was about the size of a sparrow, and it was up in a tree. And then we can maybe go into colors and things like that, right? Or you could say, was it bigger than a robin or smaller than a crow? Did it fit in there somewhere? We can also use some of the shapes on the body that we see, like the beak shape here for all 3 birds is different. And there's a lot of different ways to explore this. Some of the fun that I've had with school groups, this is again from Moortown Elementary. They did these reverse silhouettes. So instead of doing the bird with black and the bird in black on a white background, they did white on a black background. And they traced birds from magazines and field guides and things like that, and then cut out the silhouette. And then, of course, they quizzed me when I came in to visit and asked me if I could figure out who was who, which was a lot of fun. The other way that I do this is I laminate sets of usual suspects. So as we get to know birds that are our usual suspects in our neighborhood, I make a whole bunch of different laminated pictures that I pull off the web. And so this one here, actually, can you guys guess who this is? So this is a kiddo, or is it a teacher? No, this was at a teacher workshop. So these are teachers that have taken, they each picked a bird that was laminated, and then we kind of rebuilt them from nature. And so we were outdoors and we picked leaves and sticks and twigs and stones and all of that to kind of rebuild that shape of the bird and get at some of the textures and all of that. It's really super fun. Anybody got to guess who this is? Really common. Big. Blue jay or crow? Yes, crow. Yeah. So this is crow. We've done blue jay before too, and it's really fun with some of those birds that are colors that you can't easily find in nature. It's really fun to see what the kids come up with to make that bird. I had a homeschool family who sent me this. They did it with Legos. Like, how cool is that? The kids took the cards that she had printed out, and they laid out their Legos for the birds, which I just thought was cool. So we have robin up top, and then crow. I like how crow actually has like a Lego eyeball as well. And then white-breasted nuthatch is the next one. I love that. The eyeballs, the way they, and then the black cap, right? So it got it used the big round, right, wheel for the eye area, and then got a little, you got to get that black cap in there on the nuthatch. Yeah, super fun. I was so excited when she sent this to me. It was really great. This is from another homeschool family. This was a game. And so I do have an on-demand slow birding with kids course that you can purchase online. I'm going to put the code, the discount code for all of you in here right now. I'll get you 20% off. It's 5 different lessons with videos and all kinds of like handouts and links and stuff. So there's 5 different lessons, and this was a game. So we looked at robin, and we looked at parts of a bird, and we took dice, and we assigned them to the different parts of the bird, and we did a drawing game together where you roll the die, and that corresponds to a part of the bird. You can see that in the card. They did it a little bit differently up here, but they numbered all the different parts of the bird. And so as you rolled the die, you would draw that part of the bird. So you were kind of drawing them out of order, but it was really fun. Another way you can do it is you can do it as a group, and you pass the drawing to the next person, and it just keeps coming around. So you add, so it's like a collective art kind of experience to play around with birds and parts of birds. And it's really funny because they end up really wacky, because you might have somebody that draws something that's supposed to be like on a shorebird, and then the next person draws really, really short legs, and you get somebody with a big tail. So it's a lot of fun to experiment and play around with. Of course, listening is a big part of this as well. And I don't think we do a great job of teaching people how to listen. I talk in some of my intro to slow birding courses for adults. And this year I'm going to have a level 2 course on deep listening. It's a whole soundscape out there. And a lot of times it's overwhelming to listen to all of that at once. So one of the ways that I found that's really great to kind of break this down is to kind of use the work of John Young. He wrote a great book called What the Robin Knows. And he has broken bird vocalizations down into 5 voices. And you can put them in 2 different groups. There's songs and there are calls. Songs are the ones that birds use in the spring and the summer for mating and territory. They're the longer, more melodious notes that they sing. And then calls can serve these other 3 purposes: to stay in touch with one another. They can be food or begging calls from babies that you're going to hear like midsummer and on. And then there's alarm calls, which really kind of hit you right in the chest, and you'll notice them as well. And those are the ones that are really fun to pay attention to because it means something else is going on. And I'm noticing that the code, I put 2 O's instead of 2 D's. It's supposed to be kiddos, KIDDOS. Don't put 2 O's in there because it won't work. So do kiddos, and that will work. So when we start to listen to birds, if you're on your sit spot and you're starting to break down different bird vocalizations, it's really important to go back to your usual suspects again. right? Because you can get really overwhelmed with all of the different vocalizations. So if you start with someone like Chickadee that does chickadee dee dee dee, that's the contact call. And you can notice that as they come into feeders or they come into brush piles or into hedges. That's the song that or call that they're using with each other to stay in touch. And then when they do switch to, hey, sweetie, or cheeseburger, right? That's the song that they use to attract a mate. And we hear that in the Northeast as early as February. So all songbirds, perching birds, we can't use those same vocalizations for things like gulls or even crows. But most of our perching birds, like the usual suspects that you'll most likely have around you in large numbers, their voices break down in that way. And I would say the two great birds to start with, especially with kids, are robin and chickadee. The last big question that you want to ask when you're hanging out with kids is, what is that bird doing and why? There are all these great behaviors that we can notice, that kids notice even before we do, that will give us clues about what they're doing and what their day-to-day is like, whether it's maintenance behaviors like preening or feeding, or whether they're social behaviors that have to do with nesting and mating. I'm going to try and share one of my favorite videos that came from a teacher in Canada that I kept connected with through Twitter, of all places. And she and I would have these conversations back and forth as she was working with her kindergartners, and they would post videos and tag me in them. So let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little backdrop here. So this is from the Fairview Public School kindergarten class in Ontario. And you're gonna hear a little girl talking. Hopefully I've got the, oh no, okay, I gotta stop share really quick. And then I'm gonna share again. I forgot to put the sound on. So the, there we go. So she is watching from the classroom window. This is out where there are a bunch of feeders. The bird is right in the center of the screen here. And you'll hopefully hear her talking. So Liza, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if you hear the vocalizations from this girl? Hopefully. Oh, and I gotta pull we're gonna pull this all the way back. Here we go. Go back, back, back.
Or Mrs.
All right, I hope you heard what she said. I'm gonna pull it back to right about here because I think this is where she says it. You can hear all the other kids in the background, and then she says something.
Mr.
Oh, almost.
Angry. Stop being angry, Mr. Or Mrs.
So here's what was going on. So this bird in the middle of the screen, she was watching it, and she says, "Stop being angry, Mr. or Mrs." I love that she's like, I don't know if you're male or female, so I'm going to make sure to include both. Super cute, right? And so the bird is cocking its tail over and over and over again. It's this really quick kind of flick of the tail. You can see it just a little bit here. Anybody got an idea who that is? Who's that bird? Yes, all right, Stacy, you got it. Red-winged blackbird. And so we went back and forth with a conversation online, and I asked a couple of questions. And the first question I asked was, how do you know it's angry? Like, what made you think it was angry? And so the teacher is having the conversation back with the student. The student, through the Twitter messages, she was like, A says she was watching how it was holding its body. And I just, through the whole unfolding of this, I was just completely blown away by what this little kindergartner noticed. So she notices how the bird's holding its body. She's like, I think it's angry. Why do you think it was angry? Was my next question. And she said, because all the kids from the other classroom were coming outside and they were walking right through where the bird was trying to get food. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So I went to some of my bird behavior books and looked it up. And it turns out that this behavior, especially that cocktail, is used when the blackbird feels threatened, especially by human presence. And I just was like, no way. So the things we notice when we slow down, it may not be something that we understand right away, but by staying curious and continuing to ask those questions and keep asking why do you think this, right? You can get down to it, and then you can demonstrate how to use resources to find the answer, which is what I think is so magical about this practice of really slowing down and being attentive in how we notice birds. All right, I'm going to leave you with a quote and a way to get in touch with me. This is from this really cool book by Thor Hansen. He wrote this book called Feathers, The Evolution of a Natural Miracle. He says, in a result-oriented culture like ours, it's easy to get hung up on endings, on figuring things out and finding precise solutions. But a true fascination continues building with each new piece of information, making new connections, revealing new patterns, and opening new perceptions. The exploration of natural miracles is a fundamentally open-ended and curiosity-driven enterprise. It reminds us that science is not always about the answer, it's about the questions. So thanks you guys so much for having me tonight. These are all the different ways that you can get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, all as Bird Diva. My website's there. And all my online courses, for the first half of 2023 will be announced in December. And you will be able to register for my adult intro to slow birding course. The on-demand kid slow birding course is online. It's available at any time. And and of course, if you want to get together and do another workshop or session or in person, I am happy to come and visit you. We can figure that out. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thanks, Liza, for dropping stuff in the chat. And we'll grab a couple questions here. Hopefully I didn't go over too much.
No, Bridget, it's wonderful. And I love that you would like to come to Colorado.
Yes, please. I want to meet all of your birds for sure.
Yeah. Great.
Oh, so Alan says, do you have any suggestions for attracting birds to your yard? Yes. Okay, leave it messy. Leave up all those dead flowers, seed heads, all of that at the end of the year for your perennial gardens. They are a treasure trove for all the little sparrows and goldfinches, and they'll literally hang right off of the flower heads if you leave them behind. Brush piles are another great one, especially if you're not in an urban area. Those can be, you need shelter. So food, shelter, and water are the three things. A nice bird bath. I'm about to switch mine out to my heated bird bath here in a couple, probably next week or so. But I have a nice kind of cement very grippy bird bath that the glazed ones, the birds tend to have a little bit harder time perching on the edge. So if you put some pebbles or gravel in it, they can come and kind of grip onto the gravel and be able to get sips of water that way. And then bird feeders, of course, I use sunflower, thistle seed, and suet. Color code your bird feeders. It makes it easier for the kids to say, there's a bird on the green feeder. And you can either do that by purchasing feeders that are colors, or you can tie ribbons to them so that it's easy for them to talk to each other about where they're seeing different birds. Super. Any book, to Spanish. Question about a bird bath. Okay. No, and I don't know any Spanish books, but now I'm really curious. And I have a couple of friends that I probably could ask about that and send a list. Thank you for that question. That's a stretch for me, and I appreciate that. Good. Liza, do you know any Spanish?
I don't off the top of my head. I actually wonder if Paula does on the call. And either way, Gabriella, we'll send the recording out to everyone, and then we'll do a little digging and we'll include whatever we find around Spanish books.
That would be great. Thanks for that question. Will I say more about bird baths in the winter? Why are bird baths necessary in the winter? Yeah, so if water freezes up and birds can't get to it easily, it's really nice for them to be able to access water in that way, from a heated bird bath, and bathing too, right? So they need to bathe even in the wintertime to keep their feathers healthy and clean. Luckily, we live right by a brook. If you have a brook on the property where you are, you'll probably find those spots in the brook that don't freeze and have enough flow of water through them. And those are the places you want to go and hang out during the winter and look for birds, because they'll be either feeding or bathing in there. We've had herons come through and use our brook very, very late in the fall and the early winter, because it's one of the few places that still has open water where there are small minnows and things that they can feed on as they're moving further south as things freeze up. Yeah. Paula, thank you so much. What is the difference between, okay, so on demand. So when I hold courses in person, you get videos for the content, and then the in-person weekly sessions are discussions. And so the on-demand piece is minus those live discussions with other people. And so it's something that you can do at your own pace and kind of complete on your own. So I've offered the kids slow birding course that way, and the intro to slow birding course that way, at a discounted cost than when I hold them in person, because they're absent, like 4 or 5 online discussions with the community of people who are taking the course. That's the difference.
Bridget, I want to honor your time. There's one more question in the chat. Also, do you want to plug your survey in? You had a survey.
Yeah, I have, and I don't know if I can get to that quick. I can try.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it while you.
Yeah, it's on my Facebook page. So you can find Bird Diva on Facebook as well. And I have an end of the year survey where I'm looking for feedback from people about what they would like to learn about next year. And I'm really excited because one of the things that everybody's answering that they want to do is a kith and kinship course to really look at shifting how we relate to the land and to animals, including birds and plants and trees on the land, and thinking about them more as relations, as kin and kith, rather than as objects. So very cool to see folks are excited about that. 3rd grade, okay, binoculars. I have some great binoculars, but they're having a hard time focusing them. Yeah. That email me, because that's please, Maria, email me, because that's like a little bit of a longer discussion. Maybe take a couple snapshots of them. I do have binocular recommendations for kids that are very different than older kids. So younger kids need things that are smaller and will fit in their hand better. The way binoculars flex to accommodate for how far apart your eyes are is very different when you're working with like little ones as opposed to once we're adults. It's really different. Please email me, because I have a whole sheet on that I could send you. Okay. Yeah. I know, and donated binoculars are so hard because sometimes they've been knocked around a bit. And so when you look at them, if you look through them and like, it's like this, then they've probably been smacked out of alignment. So then you just got to look through one. That's not too much fun. But yeah. Okay. Super. Did I miss any other questions? Yes. Okay. I will get a sheet to Stacy and Liza on binoculars, because we all need that. And here's a pitch: go to your local Audubon chapter, because sometimes local Audubon chapters have grants that will help you pay for binoculars. I know the chapter that I'm on the board for, we give out $1,000 on a rolling basis. And so you can apply for money at any time during the year. And binoculars are a great investment that'll bring a lot of joy.